going to play you a tune. It's an Irish jig. My full name is Finn, with two N's, F-I-N-N, as in Huckleberry Finn. Finn MacOwen. It's an Irish name.
And you're from where now?
I'm from a place called Mallow in County Cork, in Ireland, the south of Ireland. Oh, I've gone out of Ireland a long time. I've gone out of Ireland 30 or so years. And initially I went to England, and I ended up in Australia and New Zealand. And in the year 2000, I decided I was coming back to Ireland. I had planned coming back to Ireland. My wife is a New Zealander. So we left New Zealand with plans to come back to Ireland. We had no intention of coming to France at all. Okay, gardening as a profession, which came late to me as an individual, but it was always in my family. So I eventually became a gardener, and now I find great peace in gardening. I find great opportunities to be creative while I'm gardening. I write poetry, I think about philosophy, I think about life. I experience death and I experience rebirth almost daily in the garden. I see insects dying, I see insects being born. Sometimes over here in the pond, last thing I do before I leave the pond is I check to see if there's any insects struggling, insects that have come down to drink and got trapped and are whirling around waiting to die. I can't leave without saving them. I take them out. I think gardening has made me Buddhist. It has had such a tranquilizing effect on me that you can't force anything in the garden. You know, you've got to work with it and nature. It actually brings you down to a certain level. This is the most amazing job I've ever had in my life. White-frocked virgin earth, conceal your imperfections before the light of sun demands to see within the chastity of your gartered lace. Toss your snowdrop bouquet to the blizzard wind and mock the innocence of its confettied waste, then smile mischievously at all the season's suitors you have graced. I'm an artisan by French standards. I'm registered as an artisan. In the Chambre de Métier, in the Chambre de Métier, where you register when you come here. I'm registered as a stonemason. I'm registered as a ferronnier, which is a blacksmith welder. I'm registered as a woodworker. But these are things that I've acquired. But the writing of poetry is something that was given. And I see it as a different form of art then. Vacant eyes look down in an unforgiving stare. Innocence denied its freedom. What now, brave man? One must but see their pain. Trophies from your violent past. Art has no comparison. Rusting fusels a symbiotic insult to the game of waste. May the howling winds remind you, nor thoughts alone be left devoid of predators. Telltale signs of hot and cold on the rooftops told. Icicles transfused their droplets from a weakened sun. But soon these veins of life solidified, and as the heart a resting place had found, the longest hibernation had begun. with weighted eyes, eternity became the face of inexpression. I think that most artists, their art comes from the ether, the gardening comes from the earth. You know, we've got so much assistance as a gardener. We've got so much sun and rain and wind. You know, you look at the garden, people come in here and they say, my God, this is beautiful, you know, and they congratulate me for it. And I always sort of feel this, that, you know, what do I do here? I water it and I weed it, you know. It's not a lot more to it, really. The art of the original setup, the landscaping, the layout, that's artistic. Perhaps the knowledge of which plant does better in the light and in the shade, yes, it's knowledge, but it's acquired knowledge. I don't think art is acquired knowledge. I think art, I think a lot of the early artists and musicians didn't even study. It just came to them. I think that's the real essence of esoterical art from the ether. That's the difference. In my own life, I've been bohemian all my life. I don't know why, but I have been. I've been a wanderer all my life, and I've been controversial all my life. I've been in the firing line. I tend to actually not censor things before I speak, and I'm not very diplomatic, and I see it as a very similar way to the Marquis de Sade behaved. I don't like paying lip service, and the Marquis de Sade didn't do it either. And you know, I'm always having to accept the consequences for my actions, and which is what the Marquis de Sade did. You know, there was times when he could have freed himself in the physical sense, and but then again, you may ask the question, what is freedom? I'm a gardener. What could be freer than being a gardener? Everything that I work with is free. Everything that actually surrounds me in the gardens is a free spirit, whether it is butterflies or bees or birds or whatever. It's all to do with freedom. And I ended up, without knowing it, doing perhaps the freest occupation that there is, and that is to be a gardener, or a gypsy, or a bohemian. I'm sort of a mixture of all three.
Who is this on the easel?
This is Finn. He's a resident of Lacoste, and I felt the need to paint him.
Any particular reason?
I guess he's kind of like reminded me a lot of myself, and I like the fact that he reminds me of someone who's young, even though he's not my age. He's young in spirit, and I feel it's important to like paint people you admire.
My philosophy for life in general is, I'm a vegetarian, of course. I don't expect everyone to be vegetarian, but I am, and that helps with my philosophy. Is that I try to live life with nature as I do with people and thoughts, and be as loving and as caring and as appreciative of what is around us, and not to be unreflective, is to reflect and be conscious every minute and hour of the day of sounds and tastes and everything I eat and drink. It's wonderful to be alive, and it's wonderful to give this philosophy to other people. And I discovered that once, when I became vegetarian, that my whole attitude to life changed. That's all I can say. I talked about Buddhism and the pacifist type of life that Buddha was advocating for the world. And I knew from an early age in my life that I had this tendency, because I remember as a young child There was a little black beetle in the toilet pan of the house at home, and I was trying to get it out, and somebody had urinated in it, and I don't think black beetles like urine because it was obviously acidy, and it was struggling in there, going down, diving, everything, panicking. And my mother came in to the bathroom and flushed the toilet, and I think it was my first angry moment as a child that she done that she didn't help me take it out. It is only on reflection I realised that I had this in me now. I didn't know back then what it all meant. No. But if the camera can be shot in here to see this photograph, we're talking about fear and anger. Now, this is a photograph that was taken from a helicopter in the South Island of New Zealand while I was there. And these horses are wild horses in the South Island of New Zealand, and they were culling them. You can see the way the manes are all being blown up by the rotors of the helicopter. You can see the leader of the pack here, the stallion. You can see the anger. You can see the fear. You can see the fear. This whole picture is fear. This destroyed me. I tried to save the horses, but I couldn't. I tried everything to save these horses. 5 minutes after this photograph was taken, all of these horses were dead. If you look at the photograph, you can see the innocence and the anger. This is why I left New Zealand. This is what drove me out of New Zealand. I became a vegetarian, and I noticed a lot of things changed in my life. There was a peace descended upon me. I became more at one with nature. I wasn't beyond it. You know, we're talking about the concept of religion and God and everything. I have great difficulty with God, but I have no great difficulty with a universal power. A universal power might be what they mean by God. I don't know. I think the word God derails people. We spoke about Lucky Strike, the cigarette brand. A brand of cigarette that didn't work, and they brought in an advertising agency. They changed the box, they put a red dot on it, and they called it Lucky Strike. Same product, it went. Religions are like that. People have been at war over religions, but do they realise that they're all drinking out of the same bottle if they move the labels, really? You know? And I think that when that realisation comes, we'll have a common understanding of one another. Why am I in Lacoste? Faith, chance. I think perhaps most people are afraid to pursue these little hints of chance that they have in their lives. They're afraid, and I have never been afraid of that, because having been an alcoholic for most of my life, I've always been in situations of having nothing and not knowing where I was, and just pursuing some wild notion doesn't frighten me. I don't mind going down the wrong road, you know? It's always something down the cul-de-sac, really. Perhaps if we want to talk about time, and we just touched on my watch, which is permanently stopped at 3:05. So the watch the time wasn't selected for any particular reason. When I bought the watch 26 years ago, in
on the King's Road in Fulham, it was 3:05. It was stopped at 3:05. The watch was broken then, and it's still broken. And this is why I like it, because I don't want to be a slave to time. But this is the greatest reminder of time that you can have. It keeps me in the now. Because the AA philosophy teaches us to live one day at a time. I'm a gardener by profession, and gardening has taught me that I can't control growth. I have to wait and watch. I've always rather liked that song. I think it was by Tammy Wynette. I'm just going to sing a little line of it now, which was about alcoholics. One day at a time, sweet Jesus, that's all I'm wanting from you. Help me to do everything one day at a time. Show me the stairway that I have to climb. God, give me the break to do everything one day at a time.
When I was drinking, I was very selfish. I was very self-centered, because the only thing I thought about was myself. I didn't think about anybody. My parents, my wife, nothing. All I thought about was Finn. Totally egotistical, self-centered. And at the time I stopped drinking because of this young Italian lady, and a whole new perspective on life came at one time. The vegetarianism, the non-drinking, it was the time for me. It was my time. It came, you know. Okay, so here we are in Lumeran, and on my left-hand side here is the gravestone of Albert Camus, who died in 1960 in a car accident on his way to Paris. As you can see, the grave is virtually hidden away. This was his choice. He didn't want anything elaborate, which is how he lived in his life. And while I was here, I was asked the question, why did I stop drinking and when did I stop drinking? And I thought it was probably a good opportunity to pay homage to the person that actually induced my sobriety, as it were. And it's a story that began back in 1970 when I was living in London. I met an Italian girl. Her name was Luciana Giannini, and at the time I was drinking day and night without stopping, taking drugs as well. And Luciana befriended me, and she came to the pub that I drank in, which was the White Hart in Fulham Broadway, and she came in every day without fail, every night. I wasn't aware of it at the time that Luciana was in love with me, and she tried everything to get me off drink and to go back to Italy with her. But I couldn't see beyond the froth and the Guinness in those days. And Luciana gave up on me, and she went back to Italy. And sometime later I met a New Zealand girl, and I ended up in New Zealand. I got married, but a lot of things happened during the period with Luciana and I, and one of the things that probably brought us together most was on a Patrick's Day, while she was with me in London. I got into a row with some English guys, and I put my fist through a door that had reinforced glass, and I cut all the tendons here in my hand, and my arm was out of commission for virtually a year. I could hardly use it. So Luciana wrote all my letters for me, and I dictated them, and she'd write home to Ireland for me. So everyone was familiar with her handwriting. I went out to New Zealand with my wife, and in 1994 my mother contacted me. She said that there was a letter came from Italy for me. It was from Louisiana, obviously. But I never actually got the letter. I've since haven't got the letter. But later I found out approximately what the content of the letter was. And I can only assume why I didn't get the letter. I will explain that to you later. I came back from New Zealand in the year 2000, and I had occasion to go to London one day, and I met some old friends of mine, and they said that there was a parcel, a brown parcel, in one of the addresses that I had lived in, and it had been there for some years. And I went round and I collected it, and it was this book. The title of the book is Le Ore Lasciate by Luciana Giannini, the girl, the Italian girl. It's in Italian. Of course I didn't understand Italian. A bit now perhaps, but none at all then. I had it translated. And it starts off, Et puis sera fini. And then there was Finny, which is what she used to call me. So Luciana wrote a lot about me in the book, talked about my alcoholism, talked about how strange I was. I slept with Luciana several times. I never had sex with her. I probably wasn't able to. And I didn't realise until after I had the book translated that she was truly in love with me. But the letter that went to Ireland, which my mother got, I can only assume that my mother perhaps opened the letter and read it and associated this period of my life in London with Luciana and thought that I was probably far off better in New Zealand with my New Zealand wife than I was mixing up with Luciana again. But what Luciana had written about was that she had developed cancer and she was dying, and she wanted me to come and help her to die. But I never got this letter, so Luciana died without me coming. Would I have come from New Zealand to Italy to help her die? Of course I would. So the day I got this book, I was in a bar and I bought a glass of whiskey and I poured it over my head and I got a match and I set my hair on fire, and I never drank since. So in some strange way, Luciana, even though she didn't succeed while she was alive in stopping me drinking, she certainly succeeded when she died. So I thought perhaps here's a good time, while we were paying homage to great writer Albert Camus, I'd pay homage to Luciana. Perhaps had it not been for her, I wouldn't be here today, because I don't know what would have stopped me drinking if it wasn't her. Perhaps in a way, I shouldn't be, perhaps I should be generous enough to myself and say I deserved it, really, because I think I deserved it. I think I needed a break, because if I didn't get this break, I would certainly have died. There's no doubt about it. I was on the road to dying. If it wasn't by abuse, it would have been suicide, because I had no values in life at all. I had nothing to live for. I have no children. I had nothing. The only kind thing I did, is it done or did? I did. The only kind thing I recently can attribute to myself was the fact that I exiled myself in France rather than put my dog in quarantine. That was the only kind thing that my only achievement since I started drinking. I've had serendipity all my life. I can never explain that. I've had good fortune, good luck, good health all my life. People even remark upon it. People have remarked upon this. And, I'm very content with my life. I'm not affluent. I'm in debt. I've got mortgages. I've got all sorts of things, but it doesn't bother me. And I've arrived in a place in my life, not only a geographical place, but a mental place in my life that has evaded me since I was a teenager. I've arrived here. I suppose the Indians and the yogis would call it nirvana. You know, I feel as though I've got nirvana now.
Why do you love nature?
I am nature. If I don't love nature, I don't love myself. What's the most important thing to me is to be reflective and to be conscious and to be available for people. Because if you're not available for people, you're not available for yourself. It's simple. That's the nuts and bolts of it. And what I've discovered now is the most important thing is to be present for people. Be present for people. Always be able to do as much as you can for people, and to try and think of other people's situations and not to be constantly dwelling on our own problems. Because I have found that by being available and present for other people, my own life doesn't seem to feature anymore.
What is one thing that you would say to everybody? If you could say one thing to the whole world right now, what would you say to them?
Think.